markers are purely invented and used to make your art fun. These are the basic things you need to know about watercolor markers. 1, you don't need them at all. 2, if you have them, it will make your art more fun. Let me show you what I mean. If you are new to my channel, my name is Campbell, and I really like to have fun on YouTube and share with you all my tips and tricks to break down everything that's hard about drawing and make it super easy. I have a great mixed media channel as well. One of my most very favorite products for having fun with drawing is the watercolor marker. You know what's so fun about the watercolor marker? It's like actually like super unnecessary, and this is what makes it ultra fun. In fact, I can't think of a single like fine artist who actually uses a watercolor marker for serious purposes, okay? All right, now listen to me, because these can get kind of confusing. There's a lot of art supplies on the market, especially in the craft space, that are variations of the watercolor marker. But basically, something that comes in the form of a marker, but when you add water to it, it all like dissolves and becomes watercolor. So I will demo this to you fully in just a second. I just want to talk about brands. There's like a gajillion brands out there as well. I'm only going to talk about 3 of them for the case of simplifying this video so we can get to the freaking fun part, okay? So I have 3 favorite brands, and so these are the only ones I'm going to talk to you about. One is the Ecoline brush pen, because I like its nib. It's got a nice juicy nib, and because these barrels are thick, they hold a lot of ink, and I really like the colors that they come in. So that's why I recommend the Ecoline brush pens. I'm pretty sure they're not light fast, and so they're not for serious fine artists. My second favorite brand of watercolor marker are the Tombow markers. I love Tombow markers. They have really good juicy tips as well. They have a nice juicy brush, and they have a nice little bullet tip at the end. I love Tombows because they're not that expensive, and they come in like a gajillion colors. And I like anything that comes in a gajillion colors because I hate mixing my colors, and I like to be able to open up a cat and know exactly what I'm gonna get out of the other end. And they also do a really good job of sort of color swatching their caps. So you can like go buy them by their cap color, and it gives you a pretty good indication of what it's gonna look like. And that's kind of rare in an art supply. So I appreciate that about the Tombow marker, and I love working with them. These are dye-based, so these are also not archival. They are not artist grade. They're gonna fade after a while. However, they're awesome in your art journals, and if you wanna play and get this full range of spectrum of colors, like they're an awesome buy. So I do highly recommend Tombows. Oh, they also have a really sweet skin tone pack set that I highly recommend, and they have a great gray toned set as well. So I love working in black and white, so those are 2 nice kind of like specialty packs. Okay, so these are my 2 favorite craft grades. My recent obsession, as you will see with the 2 books that I just published, my books on Art Deco, I do a lot of work with watercolor markers, and these puppies are insane. These are artist grade product, so they are more expensive. And they are made by Winsor-Newton, which is like a classic watercolor fine art brand. I love them because they are light fast, they are archival, and so you do get what you pay for. You pay a lot, but you also get a lot in return. They also have 1 little bullet nib, 1 juicy brush nib, and these are the juiciest of all 3 brands that I'm talking about today. And I want to do you a little demo as to why these make drawing so much fun. Because it's cool for me to say it, but you're not going to believe me unless I show you. Real quick before we get started, a note about paper. When you're using any water, okay, any water in any art project, do yourself a favor. Chuck your mixed media paper and go get some watercolor paper. It literally makes the world of difference. And you can't have the maximization of fun if you're working on crappy paper. So go get some good watercolor paper before you try this. Trust me, it makes a world of difference. And in case you're not that familiar with watercolor paper, it typically comes in two kinds. One is hot pressed, and hot press is really smooth. So if you're doing really like fine drawings and you like working with your mechanical pencil and having precise drawings, grab some hot press. If you like to use a lot of water and you get messy and painty, grab some cold press. Okay, that's pretty much all you need to know about watercolor paper. And just kind of giving a verbal explanation of why watercolor markers are so fun and like why they're special and why you would ever pick them up is because of this. It turns a drawing into a painting very quickly and very coolly. And all you need is a water and a brush. And you can make this giant leap from drawing to painting with just this one, with just adding water. So it's really, really cool, and that's where the fun factor comes in. It can make a drawer into a painter any old day of the week, and all I need is a little water. It's super neat. Let me show you. Watercolor markers are great for people that are learning to draw. And again, it elevates your work from here to here. Oh, wait, I should say here to here, in just a flick of a water brush. So I walk every day because it's my total sanity. So I've been taking these pictures on my walk, and I wanted to do some drawings, but I don't want to spend my life on these. You know, I just like to come and doodle and relax. So I want to show you how these are done and how they're so fast. Okay, so here I'm working on in my watercolor paper journal by Strathmore, and I just want to show you how quick and easy these are. All right, so I'm going to take a pretty color. This is quinacridone magenta. So if I wanted to draw, say, this flower right here, just a quick little floral doodle. Okay, I have my phone. I'm going to, and you can do this in pencil first if you want to sketch it out, that's fine. So here's just me doing this little doodle that's cut off, and it looks like this, and this petal is here, and this one kind of overlaps it. Whoa, here, and then this fifth one is here. Okay, and then there's kind of solid in the middle. All right, so if you want to, you could just color this in using this lovely, juicy brush tip, right? And use it as like a classic marker. And you could fill this all in and just do nice marker work, just like that. Okay, I'm like the sloppiest and I'm the most impatient person. So you know what's so golden about these? So here I am going blah, 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 blah. I'm not even coloring this in nicely or carefully. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna rush. This is messy. Look, I haven't even filled it in. So I'm just gonna take, this is literally just water. Those are beads I just put glass beads because it helps clean my brushes off. Now what happens is when I run my brush over this, it picks up the pigment, and then look, you can, oops, be a little bit more neat, geez. You can get this really super immediate painterly effect by quote unquote activating the pigments that are in the ink that's in the markers. It essentially transforms your sloppy coloring move into a beautiful watercolor painting. So come on. I mean, it doesn't really get any much more fun and magical than that, does it? Nope. If you didn't answer nope, you're fired. All right, look at these. No, it's just so neat because like, look how sloppy my under drawing was. And then in just like a little swish of my brush, you get like this whole completely different look. And what I like to do when I'm using my watercolor markers is I like to layer them. And I know it sounds like we're getting fancy, but all that means is I do one layer, I blast that with my hair dryer because I am not waiting around for that sucker to dry. And then you can go back and you can add some more. And I will show you what that more actually means in 1 second. Just need to shoot that with my hair dryer. All right, so now this is dry And you have a couple of choices of what you can do with this. So you can, like, if it's too washed out, you can be like, oh, it's too washed out. Like, I can go back and you can just add, you can add back in some more. Maybe you can outline it again. I think I just like it because this like appeals to my super sloppy nature, but because you can layer it, you can get like a, you can get different effects. So you can like what's called, I just call it activate. I don't know what the real word is. You can re-wet it again. And you'll see me, like I teach this in my Art Deco books. My lesson next week coming out is doing a project using these. That's why I wanted to make sure you had a little bit better background of how these work. So you can layer them. And then you can dry that again. And another thing that you can do too though is like blend super easily and get these blendy effects that you can't get with dry medium because your medium is dry, right? It's just a whole different world. But if you enjoy drawing and you just want to make like pack a punch or a pow with your drawings and kind of separate yourself, take your work to the next level or give it a little bit more painterly effect, it's super easy to do that using these super fun watercolor markers. Here's like another fun thing that you can do. This is sap. You can even just take like, for example, say you just have these like wispy, you know, little grass leaves or whatnot. And then just with, again, using like a flick of your paintbrush, you can, you know, extend these, right? And it's just like a whole nother world that now is open to you. And all you're doing is running water over your marker lines. And it's just a completely transforming look. Now I also love to use watercolor markers when I'm drawing my faces because again, you can go from drawer to painter and blending and doing complex, much more complex blending and shading than you ever could with a pencil or with any dry medium. And just these markers are what makes it all possible. Now I have a bunch of other projects on my other channel, so I don't need to do a whole project, a new one from scratch with you here, but I will just borrow one of those, take it over and show you real quick in a demo here of what that looks like in terms of using these for like doing much more complex face drawings and also getting real dimension and depth when you're using them to draw and render faces. This is a really great example of how you can use watercolor markers to make a really cool effect on your faces. So this actually lesson is comes directly from my 100 Fun Fab Faces challenge that I ran back in 2018. It was so fun. There's thousands of posts on Instagram for people that have participated in this, and it really got a lot of people kickstarted with their face drawing practices. And in this lesson, I'm using this grayscale Tombows set to show how to shade a face after we learn how to draw it. And so what I'm using here is I'm starting with the lightest color, and I'm using a large swaths of this first color into the areas shown. Then I'm going to take a medium gray and I'm putting it in less areas, like so if you can see, you can still see more of the lightest color. And then the third layer I'm going in with the darkest color, and every time you go darker, you want to cover less of an area, because now when I add the water, as you can clearly see, all those colors blend together, and it's like the best cheat for face blending. So it's really hard to do that, and you have to do that with different color. If you're using pencils, you have to use a bunch of pencils, and you use a lot of work in your blending stump. But with these markers, you just like swish water over it and they all magically start combining. It's like such a cheat. It's so fun and easy. And so you might also be wondering, like, well, why use watercolor markers if you can just use watercolors? And the answer to that is, there's a couple answers really. One is that because they come in so many more colors than watercolors, you know, you just have like, they're ready to go. They're just convenient and quick, and you take off the cap and you're ready to go. And you don't need to like mix and dilute different things and use different palettes and try to get anything mixed. It's just like straight from the tube, right on your paper, add water, done. It's just like a super shortcut, but the results can be very, very striking, and it's very fast. So it's just really a great way to get a quick win. And this is another project that I did. I was really into fashion figures and fashion faces a few years ago. So this is one of my many projects that I did during that series. And these are both on my other mixed media channel. But this is the same thing. This is the Skintone Set that Tombow sells, and it's great because it takes all of the guesswork out of which colors all go together. If you buy the Skintone Set, they already go together, and then it's just a matter of, again, I start with my lightest, and then when I layer, I go darker, and then I go in smaller regions, and then I use the water to spread and blend them all together. Another reason you don't need watercolor markers is because watercolor pencils are so popular, and those are used by fine artists quite a bit. But however, what watercolor markers don't do that watercolor pencils do is leave a resin and residual pencil marks behind. When you use watercolor markers, you can really, if it's a good quality marker like the ones that I've shown here, they really dissolve down to nothing, and you don't get any of the leftover marks like you do. You can see right there on her neck. And for the rest of this project, and you can see better when she's all done, you can see there's residual pieces left by the pencil, and that does not happen with the markers. So it's such a great cheat, and the markers are such a great product to play around with, fun, expand your art repertoire, and just have fun and bring instant impact to all of your pieces, whether you're doing florals or something more complicated like by faces. So I'm going to put both of these end screens coming up are clickable links so you can do those other lessons in full time, and I will see you next week for that Art Deco watercolor marker project I was telling you about. I'll see you then.